Tonight we set sail into the gritty, greasy, worm-riddled world of pirate cuisine. You're not lounging in a plush captain's chair with a turkey leg in each hand, oh no. You're elbow deep in a barrel of something suspicious. The sea air burns your nostrils, and every bite might be your last. Picture this. The sun's just dipped below the horizon, the sky's gone purple, and you're standing barefoot on the creaking deck of a sloop, stomach growling louder than the tide. The sails flap overhead, and somewhere nearby, someone's trying to boil something in a dented pot that smells suspiciously like wet rope. If you're lucky, tonight's dinner won't try to crawl away. You're on a pirate ship in the 1700s, where food isn't about flavor, it's about survival. And between the salt air, the questionable barrels of supplies, and the constant threat of a storm tossing your dinner overboard, it's a miracle anyone kept their teeth, let alone their lives. Honestly, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. I love seeing the Bedtime crew from around the world. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step cautiously below deck. The smell hits you like a cannonball: old fish, sweat, mold, and a very bold note of vinegar. Welcome to the galley, the pirate ship's kitchen, if we're being generous. It's more like a box with iron chains rattling near the ceiling, where some poor soul is trying to cook for 40 men with no refrigeration and a prayer. The barrels are stacked in rows. Salt pork, salted beef, salted fish. Everything is salty. It has to be. Salt is the only thing keeping this food from turning into sludge. You pry open a lid, instantly regret it. The pork looks like it's seen better centuries. A layer of white slime gleams on top. That's fat. Probably. Or a fungus. Historians still argue whether it was intentional seasoning or just microbial freeloaders. Either way, you're hungry enough not to care. You grab a chunk and chew. It's chewy. It's tough. It's also aggressively bland. Salted meat could last months, sometimes years, if kept dry and sealed. But on a pirate ship, barrels cracked, seawater seeped in, and pretty soon the stuff started tasting like the ship's hull. Some pirates actually soaked their meat in seawater before eating it, thinking it helped freshen it up. Spoiler, it did not. Your meal is accompanied by a tankard of water from a wooden cask. The first sip tastes like wet wood. The second, like wet socks. Water was stored for as long as possible, but it didn't age gracefully. Algae bloomed. Mosquitoes bred. In the Caribbean sun, those barrels became fermentation experiments. You swish it around and try not to think about what's swimming in it. Sometimes, for a treat, you get peas porridge, a mush made of dried peas boiled into a sad paste. It sticks to your spoon, your tongue, your soul. Peas traveled well, and they were cheap. But after weeks of the same grey-green bowl, even the rats start passing it up. Speaking of rats, yes, they're everywhere. Not pets. Not charming little mascots. Just sneaky, squeaky stomach competition. You hear them scurrying along the beams, gnawing into your biscuit barrel. You're not mad. You get it. The biscuits aren't much better. Above deck, the crew gnaws in silence, perched like seagulls on barrels and coils of rope. The wind howls. You clutch your salted chunk and your algae brew and count yourself lucky. This is dinner. Again. Food was rationed carefully or, if your quartermaster was lazy, chaotically. Some pirates shared out fair portions, others fought for the bigger chunks. Meals depended on what was caught, what was plundered, and what hadn't already gone moldy. One historical fact: some pirate crews operated with surprising democracy, even when it came to food. Equal shares, even Steven. But if you were caught stealing someone else's ration, that could mean lashes, or worse. Here's a quirky detail that's true enough to haunt you. Sometimes, pirates stored food by burying it in sand while ashore, thinking the cool earth would preserve it. Unfortunately, local crabs often got there first. Imagine unearthing your precious meat stash only to find a smug crustacean picking its teeth with your dinner. As the stars appear overhead, you lie on the deck, stomach full of salted sadness, and wonder what tomorrow's meal will be. Another barrel opened. Another gamble with time. A little more salt, a little more rot. And if you're lucky, if you're really, really lucky, you'll get a biscuit that doesn't bite back. You close your eyes to the rocking of the ship and the quiet groans of your crewmates nearby. One is muttering about roasted chicken. Another dreams out loud of buttered bread. Someone else whispers the word cheesecake, and everyone groans in longing agony. Don't worry. We'll get to the cheese part. Eventually. But for now, you try to sleep on an empty stomach made fuller by imagination than anything you actually ate. You pull your threadbare coat tight and try not to think about what's moving in the shadows behind the galley stores. You wake up with something in your mouth. Not food, don't get your hopes up. It's a splinter from the deck. Or maybe it's a breadcrumb. Hard to tell. Your jaw aches like you've been chewing wood in your sleep, which isn't too far off from the truth. Because today, you're facing the most iconic nightmare of every pirate's diet, hardtack. The ship's biscuit. The plank of the pantry. The crunch that echoes down to your bones. You sit cross-legged near a barrel, the morning sun stabbing between the sails, and take a long look at the beige brick in your hand. It looks innocent. Like a thick, flat cookie. But the moment you take a bite, your teeth bounce off. It's not stale, it was born stale. Hardtack was made to last, not to please. Just flour, water, and heat. Sometimes baked 2 or 3 times until it reached geological status. You lick it. Nope, still tastes like drywall. Some pirates tried to soften it with broth or rum, but even then, it retained the texture of regret. You tap it on the side of the barrel. It makes a sound. A sharp, wooden thunk. You could probably defend yourself with it in a sword fight. Of course, the real surprise comes when you crack it open. You see movement. A tiny, wriggling movement. Weevils. Little beetle larvae that love dry flour and warm ships. They burrow in, lay eggs, and hatch a new generation of protein right inside your snack. You stare down at your new breakfast companions, trying to decide if you're more grossed out or grateful for the added calories. Some pirates shook them out. Others didn't bother. One fringe account even suggests some men preferred the biscuits with weevils, since they gave the hardtack a kind of meaty chew. Historians still argue whether that's true or just an old sailor's joke, but either way, you now know why pirates often ate in silence. It wasn't manners, it was mental preparation. You gnaw, suck, soften. You manage half a biscuit and a chipped molar before giving up. The ship rocks beneath you, and your jaw now clicks slightly when you chew. Not that there's a dentist aboard. Now, while you sit and question your choices, let's talk about where this misery came from. Hardtack, also known as ship's biscuit, sea biscuit, or molar mortar if you're feeling cruel, was standard across naval fleets. It was cheap, easy to store, and didn't spoil. Which is impressive, considering it wasn't really food in the traditional sense. One real historical fact: some hardtack rations issued to American Civil War soldiers decades later were still stamped with Queen Victoria's seal. Yep, that old. And still technically edible. Pirates, of course, weren't exactly issued government-grade biscuits. They raided ships or stocked up in ports, meaning their hardtack came from all over and often sat in storage longer than anyone dared admit. No dates. No packaging. Just barrels filled with little beige regrets. And if you're wondering, yes, there were games. Some pirates carved pictures into their biscuits with the tip of a knife. Others tried to toss them overboard like skipping stones. There's even one fringe tale about a game where they'd toss hardtack at each other's heads like tiny, edible cannonballs. The loser had to eat the one that hit them. You glance across the deck and see another crewmate trying to soak his biscuit in the morning rum ration. That's optimism right there. Speaking of which, the cook walks by with a ladle of gravy. It's not really gravy. It's the leftover water from boiling salted beef. He calls it flavor sauce. You're not sure if he's joking, but you hold out your tin plate and accept it anyway. You drizzle the warm, greasy liquid over your remaining biscuit half. It doesn't help. By now, you're chewing sideways to avoid the tooth pain. Your tongue finds a rough spot that wasn't there yesterday. The cook says he can help with that, and by help, he means take a chisel and knock the tooth out after a healthy swig of rum. You decline. Lunch comes and goes without much notice. Maybe a scrap of salted pork, maybe another biscuit. Dinner promises the same. You're starting to miss the Weevils, to be honest. At least they were company. Then something odd happens. One of the older pirates, greybeard, glass eye, possibly part tree at this point, pulls a tiny tin from his coat. Inside, a soft, golden square. Bread. Actual. Soft. Bread. He breaks off a piece and lets you try it. It melts. It's sweet. You almost cry. Turns out, he's been hiding a loaf he stole from a merchant ship weeks ago. Wrapped it in wax cloth, sealed it tight, and kept it for special days. Like when he wins at cards. Or when someone looks particularly close to crying over hardtack. You ask what it's like to eat bread every day. He grins. It's like chewing clouds, mate. You take one last nibble of your crumbling biscuit, feeling the splinters of flour scratch your tongue, and try not to resent how accurate that metaphor is. Evening falls, and the galley fires go out. The air grows cooler. You wrap yourself in a borrowed blanket and lean back against a crate. The stars above are bright, but your belly feels heavy, like it's filled with bricks. Because, well, it kind of is. Still, the hunger is numbed for now. You drift off thinking about soft crusts, warm dough, and the dream of someday biting into something that doesn't fight back. Tomorrow? Maybe cheese. Maybe pickles. Maybe both. But don't get too excited. The Weevils are always watching. You wake up to scratching. Not dramatic, horror movie scratching, more like the sound of tiny toenails on wood. You blink in the dim light, squint toward the corner of the hold, and there they are. Beady eyes. Long tails. Rats. You lock eyes with one particularly bold stowaway. He's standing on a barrel of flour like he owns the place. Which, to be fair, he kind of does. The rats on board outnumber the crew 3-1. They've got their own little cities tucked between the supply crates. And they eat better than you. Today's menu: moldy cheese, pickled mystery meat, and if you're unlucky, rat stew. Because yes, some pirates were not above dining on their uninvited shipmates. Especially when supplies ran low and desperation made everything start looking like drumsticks. You shuffle toward the galley, hoping breakfast is something besides a small mammal or fungus wheel. The cook, cheerful as a cat in a canary shop, presents your options: old cheese or pickled pork. You pick cheese. He opens the barrel and slices off a hunk. It squishes. That's not a great sign. The rind is fuzzy, like it's wearing a wool sweater. You stare at the green veins running through it and wonder if that's flavor or infection. Historians still argue whether early ship cheeses were aged intentionally or just naturally fermented into something vaguely edible. Either way, you hold your breath and take a bite. It's sharp. Powerful. Sort of like eating a salty sponge someone left in a cave. But you swallow it anyway. Cheese traveled surprisingly well, especially the harder varieties. Pirates often carried wheels of it wrapped in cloth or wax. It didn't need refrigeration, and mold was simply scraped off before serving. Well, mostly. Unless you were in a hurry. Or very, very hungry. Now for the pickled pork. The cook plunges a hook into a murky barrel, hauls out a pale, floating chunk, and slaps it onto your tin plate. It jiggles ominously. Smells like vinegar and regret. Pickling was one of the few ways to preserve meat without salt. And sometimes they used both, just to be sure. Of what? Nobody knows. You poke it with a knife. The meat gives way, sort of. It's soft in the wrong places, tough in others. You imagine it was once part of a pig. Now it's more abstract. Like art. Or a punishment. You chew. Slowly. Grimly. Fun fringe tidbit. Some ships used brine barrels so strong with salt and vinegar that bits of wood, leather, or bone sometimes ended up in the mix and got eaten. Not by accident. Just overlooked. After all, texture was a luxury. You sit on a coil of rope, chewing what you sincerely hope is pork, watching a rat dart past with what looked like a grape. How does he have a grape? It's not all gloom, though. Occasionally, you stumble onto edible treasure, dried fruit, maybe. Or a preserved sausage that doesn't hiss when you open it. These moments are rare and glorious, like spotting land after weeks at sea. You remember hearing about portable soup, a concentrated jelly made from boiled bones and hooves, reduced down to a leathery puck. Add hot water, and you've got soup. Kind of. Pirates carried these pucks in tins. They were lightweight, long-lasting, and tasted like salty glue. But they were warm, and that counted for a lot. Midday sun scorches the deck. You gnaw a piece of dried apple you found wrapped in cloth near the captain's quarters. It's chewy, sweet, and possibly older than you. You close your eyes and pretend it's fresh. The way the flavor bursts through the salt haze in your mouth. Pure heaven. Later that night, another pirate offers to trade you something. He holds up a small glass jar, pickled eggs. You offer him your last wedge of cheese. He takes it without hesitation. You uncork the jar and stare down at cloudy, floating orbs. They wobble like jellyfish in vinegar. You pop one in your mouth, and it's okay. Sour, rubbery, egg-like. A solid 5 out of 10, which on this ship makes it a Michelin-starred delicacy. You hear laughter from the galley. One of the younger crew members just found a rat half submerged in the flour barrel. Dead, thank goodness. The flour's spoiled. Again. That means no mush tomorrow. Or maybe worse, rat mush. The cook shrugs and says, "We'll just sift around him." You opt to skip dessert. Later, you help move a crate and find a stash of lemon peels. Dry, curled, fragrant. Someone's been hiding them. Probably for chewing. Pirates believed lemon peel helped ward off scurvy. They weren't entirely wrong. You snag one, chew slowly. It's bitter, but clean. Real. You let the flavor settle in, cutting through the mildew, the mold, the lingering pork regret. Another historical note, when pirates raided ships, food was often the most urgent prize. They'd take the cheese, the dried fruit, the pickled everything, then decide what to do with the gold. Because gold can't keep you alive when your stomach's turning inside out from spoiled beef stew. One particularly quirky record mentions a ship's cook who specialized in disguising old meat. He'd chop it up with spices, mash it with biscuit crumbs, and call it surprise pie. The surprise? You didn't die after eating it. Usually. As the sun drops below the horizon, you curl up in your hammock. Your belly's not exactly full, but it's not empty, either. Somewhere below, a rat squeaks. You hear a soft plop as something drops into a barrel. You try not to think about it. Sleep comes in waves, just like the sea. Your dreams are filled with dancing cheese wheels and vinegary clouds. You're pretty sure you're being chased by a pickled pig, but he's polite about it. Tomorrow, maybe you'll fish. Or maybe you'll steal back that grape from the rat. Either way, you've survived another day in the strangest kitchen afloat. And that's something. You don't even bother checking the water barrel today. After yesterday's mystery floaters, was that moss? Or meat? You're turning to the one true constant on this ship, rum. A small wooden cask sloshes in the corner of the galley, and you line up with the others, tin cup in hand, hoping for the day's ration. The cook, moonlighting as bartender, ladles out a splash into each cup. Not enough to get drunk, not immediately, anyway, but just enough to dull the salt sting in your throat. It burns going down. Sharp, sweet, and smoky, with a punch strong enough to knock the wind from your lungs. This is no cocktail, this is survival in liquid form. And in the 18th century pirate world, rum isn't just a beverage. It's a lifestyle. A currency. A medicine. A morale booster. A troublemaker. You gulp and blink through the fire behind your eyes. Breakfast served. The rum you're drinking is mixed with water, twice the water, if the quartermaster's honest. This mix is known as grog, and while it might sound like a joke, it was a major innovation in its time. Naval men and pirates by inheritance learned that mixing spirits with water kept the crew hydrated and happy without letting them drink themselves into oblivion too fast. Add a dash of lime juice or sugar, and it might even fight scurvy. Historians still argue whether pirates were disciplined with grog or just used it as an excuse to be merrily sloshed by noon. You wander back up to the deck, tin cup swinging, watching the crew start their day. Some sip grog like it's coffee. Others hoard it, pretending to be sober until they can sneak below for a second helping. And then there's black-eyed Joel, who drinks his rum straight and says it helps him see the future. You don't ask what he sees, you don't want to know. By midday, the sun is beating down, your mouth is dry again, and someone is already singing. Loudly. Badly. The kind of singing that means the rum's working. The kind of singing that only ends with someone falling overboard or proposing marriage to the mast. But here's the truth, rum kept pirates alive. Not just from thirst, but from despair. It numbed the pain of salted cuts, bruised egos, and never-ending biscuits. Some even rubbed it on wounds or mixed it with herbs for medicinal treatments. One folk remedy involved soaking bandages in rum and wrapping them around sore muscles. Another, slightly less advisable, was to drink enough to forget the pain altogether. There's a joke among the crew that grog cures everything except stupidity. And stupidity, it turns out, is highly contagious when the rum flows too freely. Later in the day, you're asked to help move barrels. You quickly learn that not all of them contain grog. Some are pure molasses. Some, vinegar. One even smells like fish oil. You carry them carefully, pirates took their liquids seriously. You ask the quartermaster how he keeps the grog from turning into chaos. He grunts and says, 1 ladle each. Then you're on your own. That's the policy. But rules bend. Always do. Some clever pirates figured out how to sneak extra rum, siphoning it with a hollow reed or bribing the cook with a sliver of preserved sausage. Others tried to fake being sick, begging for a medicinal shot. One guy even pretended to be bitten by a ghost crab. Didn't work, but you admire the creativity. You take another swig and feel the warmth spread to your fingers. Your stomach stops rumbling. For now. That's the magic of grog, it doesn't fix anything, but it makes everything feel about 17% less terrible. One quirky historical note, pirates sometimes toasted with odd phrases. To the devil's health was a favorite. Or may your anchor be tight and your rum be spiced. There was even a superstitious tradition of tapping the cup on wood before drinking, to keep sea spirits from sneaking up behind you. You do it now, just in case. As night falls, the second ration is handed out. More grog. The crew gathers in small circles. Stories are told, laughter breaks out, and someone attempts to juggle fish bones. It's terrible. It's glorious. A few sing. A few cry. One guy starts waxing poetic about a mango he once ate in Havana. You think about how a fruit could make someone tear up like that, and you wonder what fresh mango tastes like. Or any fruit, really, that hasn't been soaked in rum or stored in a barrel for months. Then again, if you soaked yourself in rum, maybe none of this would matter. Another historical truth: some pirates drank themselves into oblivion between raids. Not because they were wild animals, but because life at sea was hard, filthy, and short. Grog dulled the sharp edges of fear, boredom, and blisters. It also caused fights, mutinies, and the occasional very bad tattoo. Below deck, you spot a small cask labeled X. Someone's stashed their private reserve. You pretend not to see it. What happens to people who steal rum on a pirate ship? Let's just say they stop needing rum altogether. You tuck in for the night, tongue tingling slightly, head buzzing with warmth and brine. Your cup clinks as you set it beside you. A rat sniffs it and wisely backs away. Even they know better. Your last thought before sleep: you might be dehydrated, hungry, sunburned, and mildly intoxicated, but at least you're not chewing hardtack right now. And tomorrow? Maybe the cook will add citrus peel to the grog. Or maybe he'll throw in a mystery root he found in port. Who knows? It's called flavor roulette. Either way, you'll drink to it. You wake to the sound of clanging metal and a smell that's equal parts smoke, grease, and mild panic. Breakfast isn't even a whisper on the horizon, but the galley is already alive, if by alive you mean trying not to catch fire. Because today, you're helping with the worst job aboard, cooking on a rocking wooden stove. The pirate ship's kitchen is barely bigger than a closet. At the heart of it is a heavy metal box bolted to the floor, the stove. It's been repurposed from a merchant ship, patched with rusted iron, and has exactly one setting: too hot. No knobs. No temperature gauge. Just flames and fate. Your first task is to keep the fire going. Not easy, given that the logs are damp and the air's thick with salt. You feed it carefully, using bellows to coax the coals into life. Then the ship hits a wave, and the whole stove groans, tilts, and belches out a lick of fire in your direction. One fringe tale says a pirate cook once lost his eyebrows this way and just painted new ones on with charcoal. You're not sure if that's true, but you're definitely sweating off a few eyelashes yourself. With the fire going, you reach for the pot, cast iron, heavy, and black as a cannonball. Into it goes water from the barrel, a slab of salted meat, possibly pork, possibly something else, and a handful of dried peas. Then you hang it over the flames and hope the ocean behaves. Spoiler: it doesn't. The ship lurches, and the pot swings like a pendulum, splashing boiling broth across the stove. You jump back, narrowly avoiding a faceful of dinner. The cook laughs from behind a crate. Now you're learning. Pirate cooking was less about recipes and more about combat improvisation. You work with what you have: withered onions, shriveled herbs, maybe a dried pepper if someone brought it back from Tortuga. Everything's tossed in, stirred, and cooked until it's soft enough to chew or thick enough to stay in the bowl while the ship rocks. Historians still argue whether some pirates actually developed signature dishes or just gave fancy names to whatever soup didn't kill them. One guy called his stew Seedville's Delight. It was just fish guts and biscuit crumbs. But hey, branding matters. You scrape a handful of mush into a wooden bowl. It's brown, it's warm, and it smells edible. That's about the highest praise you can hope for. Nearby, the crew gathers in a loose circle, each with a steaming bowl. Some sit cross-legged, others squat on crates. One guy eats while balancing on a rope. Show off. You take your first bite. It's hot and gritty. There's definitely a bone in it. Could be from the pork. Could be from something else. You crunch it anyway. There's not much talk during meals. Not because of manners, those fell overboard weeks ago, but because everyone's concentrating on keeping their food in the bowl and not in their lap. Or on someone else's face. Someone adds a dash of rum to his stew. Another squeezes in the juice of a fermented lime. That guy. He's stirring his with the tip of a cutlass. Hygiene is flexible here. Pirate cooking tools were few: knives, spoons, one ladle, maybe a grater if they were lucky. Pots were shared, and so were flavors, whether you liked it or not. One whiff of spoiled fish could ruin an entire meal, and if you burned something, the smoke filled the lower decks for hours. But even in these conditions, creativity bloomed. One cook learned to seal biscuit dough in palm leaves and roast them by the fire, creating a kind of smoky dumpling. Another invented a pepper paste using dried chilies and seawater, which he claimed could wake the dead. It also made your tongue go numb for 2 hours. So, maybe. And let's not forget dessert, if you could call it that. Sometimes, dried fruit stewed in grog passed for a sweet dish. Other times, toasted breadcrumbs with sugar and oil formed a sort of greasy crumble. If someone found a cinnamon stick, that was a holiday. One real historical fact: some pirate ships had designated cooks, often former tavern workers or enslaved people forced into service. These cooks, while rarely celebrated, held immense power, control the meals, and you control morale. Burn too many dinners, though, and you might find yourself retired via the plank. Midday, the sun climbs, and the galley's heat becomes unbearable. You open a hatch for air, letting in a salty breeze and a swarm of tiny flies. One lands on your stew. You flick it away. It lands again. You give up and eat around it. Later, you clean the pot, scraping the burnt bits off with a spoon, soaking it in briny water, and pretending that's clean enough. You find what might be the tail of a fish at the bottom. Or a very unlucky eel. You don't ask. As the day fades, you hear plans for tomorrow's meal: smoked fish, if the lines catch anything. Someone's prepping sea biscuits, hardtack, but more depressing. And if the captain's in a good mood, there might even be dried mango strips. You'd cry, but the smoke's done that for you already. You settle down on the deck, stomach full of hot, salty mystery, and let the sea rock you to sleep. The stars blink awake. Somewhere in the darkness, the cook hums a sea shanty about soup made of shoes and seawater. You smile. It probably happened. Tomorrow, you'll cook again. Or maybe someone else will. But tonight, you survived the stove. Your eyebrows are intact. Your fingers are only mildly scorched. That's a win, pirate style. You're not even finished scraping the soot from your sleeves when chaos erupts over breakfast. There's a loud thunk. A yell. A splash. You turn your head just in time to see a half-eaten chunk of salted beef flying across the deck, narrowly missing the cook's head and landing with a soggy slap beside a coil of rope. Who took my biscuit? The voice belongs to Jory, a wiry deckhand with a twitchy eye and an appetite twice the size of his stomach. He's standing in front of his tin plate, glaring at it like it just insulted his mother. The biscuit is gone, and he is not okay about it. Here's the thing about life at sea: food theft was serious business. Like, deadly serious. When you only get 2 meager rations a day, and the line between eating and starving is thinner than the soup, every crumb counts. And when that crumb mysteriously vanishes, somebody's walking the plank. Or at least catching some fists. Fighting over food happened more often than not. Pirates weren't picky, but they were protective. If someone so much as sniffed your cheese chunk too long, you started watching them like a hawk. And don't even think about cutting in line for rum, that's the kind of move that gets you stabbed with a soup spoon. As Jory stomps across the deck, accusing everyone in a 10-foot radius of being a biscuit bandit, The captain's voice booms from above. Enough. Silence. Except for the gulls. Last man who stole food got tied to the mast with his mouth full of barnacles. You're not entirely sure if that's a metaphor or an actual punishment. Historians still argue whether pirates truly followed their own set of bizarre justice systems or just made up rules as they went along, but either way, food theft ranked just below mutiny in the hierarchy of unforgivable sins. You shuffle away from the chaos, hugging your own meal a little closer. It's a bowl of pea soup. Thin, pale, vaguely green. But it's yours, and if anyone even looks at it sideways, you're ready to growl. A few years ago, on a different ship, a man was caught hoarding biscuits in his hammock. A dozen, maybe more, wrapped in oilcloth and hidden in a rope bundle. When they found him, the biscuits were full of weevils, and so was his hammock. He was given two choices: walk the plank, or eat all 12. He chose the plank. Below deck, a whisper starts circulating. Someone's been stealing ham from the captain's personal stores. That's not just risky, that's suicidal. Captain's rations are sacred. Everyone knows that. He keeps them in a separate chest, locked tight, and marked with a small skull just in case anyone's tempted. By evening, the whisper becomes a rumor. By nightfall, the crew gathers on the deck, silent and tight-jawed. The captain emerges, holding the empty ham cloth. You can smell the vinegar brine lingering in the air. He doesn't yell. He doesn't make threats. He just points. One man steps forward. A deckhand named Nolan. Young, cocky, and famously hungry. He says nothing, but his shirt's stained with something suspiciously greasy. His mouth twitches like he's holding something back or hiding the last bite behind his tongue. Take him to the mizzen, the captain says quietly. You don't know what the mizzen punishment is, but by the time the sun rises, Nolan is gone. His hammock is empty. His name, unspoken. Just like the ham. Now you know, hunger makes you desperate, but desperation has rules. On a pirate ship, every meal is a social contract. You don't steal. You don't sneak. You don't hoard. Unless you're clever about it. Some pirates devised elaborate schemes to smuggle extra rations. Fake stomachaches. Hidden compartments in their boots. One guy lined his hat with dried figs and claimed it was for scalp protection. Another carved out the inside of a book and stuffed it with cheese. You remember one truly legendary tale. A man named Razor Dan, real name, Clarence, once trained a rat to steal biscuit crumbs and bring them back to his bunk. The rat was fed scraps in return, and the partnership lasted for nearly 2 months until someone stepped on the rat and the whole scheme unraveled. Even the quartermaster, supposed guardian of fairness, had to be watched. If the man divvied up the beef unequally, or slipped an extra sausage to his favorite crewmate, it sparked mutterings. Sometimes worse. One fringe tale mentions a quartermaster being tied to the anchor and lowered into the sea just far enough to consider his life choices before being yanked back up and given a week of latrine duty. You hunker down beside a barrel at dusk, chewing slowly, eyes on your food and no one else's. The soup is salty, the biscuit hard, but it's safe in your hands. That's what matters. A nearby pirate, older, grizzled, scarred like an old map, offers you a piece of candied ginger. Rare, spicy, precious. You trade him half your biscuit. It's a risk, but worth it. The ginger warms your chest. Feels almost medicinal. Definitely forbidden. The captain doesn't notice. Or maybe he does, and is letting it slide. Not every rule gets enforced. Some days, it's better to let the crew barter and bribe and play quiet games of ration poker than risk a full-on mutiny over moldy cheese. You lie in your hammock that night, arms tucked tight around your stomach. You survived another day without starving, without stealing, and without becoming soup yourself. And that's the real pirate diet secret. Eat what you're given, guard it with your life, and if someone tries to grab your biscuit, bite back. The sunrise is pink and gold, the waves are calm for once, and there's an unusual smell wafting across the deck. It's rich, warm, meaty, familiar. You blink, sit up in your hammock, and realize someone's cooking real food. Not biscuit mush. Not pickled mystery meat. But actual, honest-to-goodness, sizzling-in fat, fresh-cooked food. You follow your nose to the galley and see a sight rare enough to make a pirate cry, a skillet, hot over the stove, filled with thick slices of ham. Real ham. With fat that's actually melting. Not jelly. Not crusted in salt crystals. But juicy. And, get this, fresh. Turns out, you just pulled off a raid. Yesterday's skirmish was fast and bloody, cannons, grappling hooks, lots of yelling, but the real prize wasn't gold or silver. It was food. The merchant ship you boarded had been heading out from port with a cargo hold full of provisions, smoked meats, sacks of flour, whole wheels of cheese, crates of fruit, and oh, sweet heaven, baskets of eggs. Unbroken. Miraculous. It's a pirate buffet now. You sit cross-legged with a plate that doesn't look like punishment. There's a fried egg, runny and golden. A slab of bread, real bread, still soft in the middle. A slice of ham so thick it practically hums when you set your knife against it. You take a bite, and for a second, everything else disappears. The sea, the rats, the smell of your crewmates' unwashed boots, it all fades into background noise. Your tongue is dancing. Your stomach is singing. Fresh food on a pirate ship is fleeting but glorious. Raids like this don't happen often, and when they do, the spoils go fast. But for a few days, maybe even a week, you get to eat like kings. Hungry, sunburned, semi-criminal kings. The bread comes with butter. Not rancid oil. Actual creamy butter that melts on contact. You slather it on a second slice and fight the urge to cry. Someone starts slicing fruit. Oranges. Apples. Even a banana. The peel's black in spots, but the inside is gold. A bite of citrus floods your mouth with brightness. It's sharp and tangy and reminds you that flavor exists. One real historical fact: merchant ships often carried food meant for colonial outposts or plantation owners, fresh produce, fine cheese, spices, and even delicacies like preserved lemons and chocolate. Pirates didn't just want treasure, they wanted what the rich were eating. And when they got it, they feasted. The cook, practically giddy, decides to make a stew with the vegetables you seized. Carrots. Onions. Potatoes. You help peel them beside a barrel, and the smell of earth and sweetness fills the air. You can't remember the last time your hands smelled like anything but salt. He tosses chunks into a pot with fresh meat and real herbs, thyme, maybe. Could be weeds. Nobody cares. It smells amazing. You're on prep duty for the cheese. It's not the moldy stuff you're used to. This is the good stuff. Creamy, soft, sharp. One wedge oozes slightly at room temperature, and you know in your heart this is what heaven tastes like. You steal a nibble. It's divine. Someone opens a small tin and gasps, preserved cherries in syrup. There's an actual cheer from the crew. The cook uses them to make a rough compote, spooning it over biscuit halves to create the closest thing to dessert anyone's had in months. Even the rats seem stunned. They peek from the shadows but keep their distance, unsure if this is a trap. It kind of feels like one. You lean back after the meal, stuffed and drowsy, belly round with joy. For the first time in weeks, you feel content. No hunger pangs. No scraping at the bottom of a barrel. Just the pleasant buzz of real food doing its good work inside you. That night, the cook strings a few sausages from the rigging to cure. They swing gently in the breeze, glistening with oil. You hear whispers of someone hoarding fruit in their boots again. Old habits die hard. But for now, There's no fighting. No shouting. No one's guarding their bowl with a dagger. You're full. Everyone's full. Pirates celebrated fresh food like treasure and often saw it the same way. The difference? Gold could be hidden. Food couldn't. So you ate, and you ate fast, before it spoiled or someone else claimed it. Historians still argue whether pirates truly lacked discipline when it came to rationing plundered supplies, or whether they simply knew life was short and meals like this were rarer than mercy at sea. Either way, no one's skipping seconds tonight. Later, you find the quartermaster carefully wrapping a block of cheese in oilcloth and sealing it in a chest marked with a red X. Emergency rations. For the lean weeks ahead. You pretend not to see it. You get it. As the stars come out, you climb the rigging and lie back, looking at the moon and listening to the distant laughter from the galley. Someone's singing again. A song about roasted chicken and wine. You don't stop them this time. Because tonight, just for a moment, you're not surviving. You're living. You wake to the sound of waves lapping lazily against the hull and a scent drifting through the air that smells smoky, spiced, almost festive. You sit up and realize the ship is anchored. You're near land. More importantly, you're headed ashore. The captain's granted a day on land to restock supplies and clean the ship. You and the crew row to a sandy inlet on a small Caribbean island. The sun blazes overhead, and the jungle edge hums with insects. But you don't care about bugs right now. All you can think about is what happens next. Tavern food. Grilled food. Beachside food. Real food that hasn't spent 6 weeks fermenting in a barrel. You trudge up the path toward a small cluster of buildings. There's a makeshift market, a crumbling dock, and best of all, a tavern with smoke rising from behind it. You catch a whiff of sizzling meat. Someone's cooking over open flame. Inside, it's dim and sticky and full of smells you haven't dreamed of in weeks. Pepper, garlic, sugar, lime, rum, and charcoal. You hand over a few stolen coins and receive a wooden bowl filled with grilled fish smothered in herbs, a hunk of hot cornbread, and glory be a grilled pineapple wedge that's practically glowing. You sit on a barrel outside, the sun warming your back, and take a bite. The fish is flaky, tender, a little sweet from the glaze, with a fiery kick at the end that makes you cough and grin. The cornbread crumbles into warm, butter-soaked pieces. The pineapple? You don't even have words. It's sticky, golden, and bursts on your tongue like candy. Pirates often spent their entire plunder in one tavern stop, eating like royalty and drinking like they were trying to outlast the rum. Historians still argue whether this was foolishness or just a celebration of survival, because who knew how many meals you had left? Outside the tavern, smoke curls from open fire pits where locals roast meat on sticks. Chickens spiced with chili and honey. Goat rubbed with cloves. Pork shoulders seared to perfection and dripping with juice. You wander among the stalls, trying a bite here, a sliver there. A woman hands you a steaming tamale wrapped in banana leaves. Inside, it's cornmeal, seasoned beans, and a bit of salted pork. Warm. Filling. Portable. Perfect. Another stand offers fried plantains and roasted peppers. You're starting to feel spoiled. Genuinely, guilt-inducingly spoiled. This is the opposite of hardtack. Pirates craved flavor above all else when they came ashore: spice, char, and sweetness, anything to reset their senses from weeks of bland, salty suffering. Many Caribbean ports were melting pots of indigenous, African, and European cooking traditions, and taverns near pirate haunts picked up the rhythm. Grilled fish, roasted breadfruit, stews thick with cumin and garlic, and enough rum-glazed desserts to make you forgive the sea for a minute. You sit beneath a palm, chewing on a coconut sweet rolled in brown sugar, when you hear someone shout from the tavern. Barbecue fight. You run back to find two pirates arguing over who makes better grilled meat, Jamaican jerk or Spanish-style pork skewers. The cook intervenes by offering a blind taste test. You're recruited as a judge, not because you're qualified, but because you're already holding a fork. Both are divine, obviously. But you pick the jerked pork, if only for the bold heat and smoky depth. The other pirate shrugs, grins, and buys you a drink. Pirates weren't exactly culinary snobs, but they learned to love and adopt the foods of the regions they visited. Grilling was easy, fast, and portable. You could build a pit, skewer meat, and eat standing up, all essential when you had one eye on your food and one on your pistol. Later, back on the beach, someone builds a driftwood fire. A fish is caught, gutted, and grilled right there on the sand. Sprinkled with salt and lime juice, served on a palm leaf. It's primitive. It's perfect. A few of the crew found sugarcane, and you take turns chewing the stalks, letting the syrupy juice flood your mouth. Sticky fingers, happy bellies, sunburned shoulders. You haven't felt this human in weeks. There's music now. Someone's got a fiddle. Another guy's drumming on an empty barrel. Pirates dance barefoot in the sand, mouths full, hands greasy, eyes sparkling. And for one fleeting moment, this doesn't feel like a life of crime. It feels like a beach party with questionable hygiene. One quirky fact: some pirate crews had designated feast nights after major hauls, complete with grilled meat, fruit wine, music, and storytelling. These weren't just indulgent, they were bonding rituals, ways to keep morale high and egos low before the next brutal raid. The sun dips low, casting gold across the surf. You help clean up, scraping charred fish skin from the rocks and licking the last of the sugarcane syrup from your fingers. Your stomach is full. Your face is flushed. Your soul, weirdly, feels a little restored. As you row back to the ship, the food clings to you, the smell of smoke in your shirt, the spice on your tongue, the sweet ache of overeating in your belly. You glance at the others. Everyone's quiet, satisfied, a little sleepy. Back on board, the galley feels colder, darker. The barrels of salted meat seem sadder than before. But your mouth still tingles from chili, your breath smells faintly of grilled pineapple, and for a while at least, you'll dream of land feasts and beach fires instead of biscuits and rats. The sea may be your life, but land tastes better. You're back at sea, and the galley smells like boiled despair again. The bananas are long gone, the grilled meat's a delicious memory. You're chewing salted pork with the texture of old leather, when the lookout calls down. Turtles. Port side. Suddenly, everyone is scrambling to the rails. You rush to the edge and squint into the turquoise water. And there they are, massive sea turtles, gliding silently through the surf like ancient, floating boulders. And to you, they look delicious. Pirates weren't just hungry, they were opportunists. And when they spotted turtles, they saw an answer to every food-related prayer. These reptiles could weigh over 300 pounds, and their meat was rich, fatty, and best of all, fresh. Within minutes, a crew is over the side in a jolly boat, armed with harpoons, nets, and the unfortunate knowledge that sea turtles sleep on the surface. It's disturbingly easy to catch one. You're a little unsettled about it, but also kind of drooling. Back on deck, the cook gets to work. You assist, somewhat hesitantly, as the enormous green turtle is butchered. The meat is firm and red, almost like beef. The fat is thick, almost jelly-like. Someone mentions that Royal Navies prized turtle meat so much that ships kept live turtles on board in pens, feeding them scraps and seawater. Why? Because turtles could survive for weeks without food or water, basically acting as self-sustaining meat barrels. You swallow hard. That might be the most efficient and disturbing thing you've ever heard. The cook rubs chunks of meat with salt and whatever spices are left from your last raid. He roasts it over a metal grate lashed between two barrels, basting with rum and seawater because what else is there? The smell? Heavenly. You take a bite, and it's juicy, savory, a little earthy, almost like beef stew crossed with duck. The fat crackles on your tongue. Someone passes you a chunk of turtle liver. You try it. It's surprisingly rich and buttery. Another pirate gnaws on a leg bone and declares it better than pig. You're inclined to agree. Sea turtles weren't just meat, they were a culinary goldmine. Their organs were edible, their eggs delicious, though questionable in texture, and their shells could even be used as cooking pots in a pinch. You eat until you're stuffed. Then you eat a bit more. A crewman sings a sea shanty about turtle soup and mermaid dreams. You have no idea what it means, but it sounds right. Historians still argue whether pirates hunted turtles responsibly or contributed to the near extinction of some species in the Caribbean. Some say pirates practiced primitive conservation, only taking what they needed. Others point to ship logs describing dozens of turtles captured in a single stop. The truth, like most things in pirate life, is probably somewhere in between. After the feast, someone suggests using the leftover bones for dice. Another proposes making a soup out of the flippers and head. The cook just laughs and starts boiling a pot. Waste not, want not. The turtle soup is thick, fragrant, and strange. Chunks of meat, tough greens, maybe some bits of onion from the last port still floating around. It's good. Really good. The kind of thing you'd actually pay for. If you weren't, a pirate. By nightfall, the crew is slow, content, and greasy. The decks shine with drips of turtle fat. The galley's a mess of bones and shells. A few more turtles were pulled aboard, trussed, and stashed in barrels with wet cloth to keep them alive for later. It's grim, but it means days, maybe even a whole week, of meals that won't taste like pickled boot leather. One quirky historical tidbit: turtle meat was so prized that ships sometimes traded it between one another, like currency. Some privateers even issued rations of turtle jerky, though it never tasted as good as the fresh stuff. Sailors wrote home about it like it was steak from heaven. You sit on deck, sipping thin turtle broth, watching the stars flicker above the sails. Your stomach is full, and your mouth still tastes faintly of roasted meat. It's moments like these, between storms, between battles, between moral reckonings, that you feel almost peaceful. And yet, it can't last. Fresh food never does out here. But for now, you lie back and savor it. Because out here, surrounded by salt and wind and endless water, anything that isn't dried, pickled, or weevil-infested feels like a miracle. And turtle miracles, apparently, taste like roast beef soaked in rum. The turtle meat is gone. You lasted 4 days, impressive, really. But the final pot of stew was scraped clean this morning, and now the deck feels hungrier. Faces look a little longer. The smell of salt pork is back in the air, and no one's smiling. So today, you fish. You've done it before, with scraps of line and rusty hooks, but now it's serious. The quartermaster declares it a full crew fishing day, which sounds nice and relaxing until you realize it's not about leisure, it's about survival. The sea around you is glittering, calm, teasing. Somewhere below those waves is dinner. Hopefully. You tie a line to a splintery bit of wood and dangle it over the side. The bait. A bit of old biscuit soaked in vinegar and rum. Classy. Next to you, one of the younger crewmates uses a hook made from a bent nail. Another guy swears by wrapping copper wire around his line for shine. Pirates were not professional anglers, but they were persistent, and they got creative. It doesn't take long before someone yells, "Got one," and hauls up a wriggling silver fish, small, but shiny and furious. Cheers erupt. Morale bumps up slightly. Pretty soon, fish start coming aboard. Snapper. Mackerel. A grouper the size of a ship's cat. The cook sets up an outdoor prep station, chopping, gutting, salting. A few fish get filleted right there on the deck. You're handed a piece, still warm from the sun, grilled over a scrap of barrel wood. It's incredible. The skin crackles, the inside flakes, and there's a smoky sweetness you didn't expect. Seat a skillet in 5 minutes flat. Pirates may not have loved the sea, but they definitely loved what it fed them. One guy hauls in an eel. Everyone recoils, but the cook grins and whispers, "Soup." You believe him. You spend hours fishing, fingers cramped, line burning, stomach growling. It's satisfying in a primal way, you versus the deep. Some of the fish are cooked plain with a sprinkle of salt and citrus juice. Others are tossed into a stew with seawater, herbs, and whatever's still edible from the last raid, a sad onion, 2 suspicious potatoes, and a single clove of garlic that started growing a sprout. Historians still argue whether pirates regularly relied on fishing or if it was more of a last resort. Some journals describe crews catching dozens of fish a day, others suggest it was mostly luck, and more common on calmer days when nothing else could be done. Either way, when fresh fish landed on deck, it disappeared quickly. And not always just fish. One crew member pulls up a squid, shrieking like he's caught a ghost. The cook is overjoyed. Slices it into rings, coats it in biscuit crumbs, and flash fries them in a little pork fat. You eat them still sizzling. Calamari, pirate style. Could use sauce. Could use napkins. Still delicious. Then comes the weirdest catch of the day, a flying fish. It literally soars out of the water and slaps someone in the face before flopping onto the deck. Everyone loses their minds laughing. The cook just scoops it up like it's a chicken breast and tosses it into the prep pile. Pirates weren't picky. If it moved and wasn't poisonous, it went in the pot. A quirky fact for the night: some pirate ships were followed by remoras, the sucker fish that clung to their hulls. Sailors thought they were lucky. Others thought they were spies for Poseidon. Either way, if one got caught, it went straight onto someone's plate. As the sun sinks lower, the final catch of the day is a small shark, sleek, silver, and very angry. After much yelling and strategic stabbing, it's subdued. The cook slices thick steaks from its side and grills them hard, with salt and lemon peel. You take a bite, and it's firm, a little chewy, but deeply satisfying. There's a bite of the ocean in every mouthful. And a little bit of revenge, too. By evening, everyone is slower. Not sleepy, exactly, just full in a way that quiets the chaos. Some crewmen lie on deck with belts undone, watching the rigging sway. One guy tries to play cards but can't stay upright. You just lie back and breathe. It's been a long day, but a good one. You caught your dinner with your own hands. You didn't eat hardtack. You didn't eat rat. You didn't cry. Pirate fishing wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Raw. Immediate. And sometimes, if you were lucky, even beautiful. A flash of silver. The sizzle of skin on flame. Salt spray on your lips and a warm belly below. You stretch out under the stars, your fingers still smelling faintly of fish, and wonder what tomorrow will taste like. Hopefully not eel soup leftovers. You wake to the sound of the bosun cursing, and you already know, something's gone wrong with the food. You scramble topside, and sure enough, the pickled barrel stores, 3 of them, have cracked open. Salt brine leaks across the floor in a sluggish tide. The culprit? A sudden temperature shift, probably the blazing sun beating on the hull. You plug your nose. The stench is unspeakable. The cook just sighs and says, "Guess we're eating what's left before it eats us." Welcome to preservation panic, a very real part of pirate food life. Salted meats, dried beans, fermented vegetables, all preserved with primitive methods, all incredibly prone to spoilage, and all likely to betray you when you need them most. Tonight's dinner, desperate salvage stew. Whatever pickled pork chunks still pass the smell test, plus a heap of dried peas and a splash of vinegar to mask whatever that is. The pot boils slowly, belching a scent somewhere between dog breath and low tide. You add some powdered mustard from the spice box, one of the few dry things that hasn't turned to clumps. It helps. A little. Pirate ships weren't equipped with refrigeration, obviously, and even barrels, blessed barrels, couldn't always be trusted. Salting was the go-to preservation method, sometimes joined by smoking or drying, but heat, humidity, rats, and time were relentless enemies. You take a spoonful of the stew. It's not the worst thing you've had, but it's close. The pork is salty and stringy, the peas are mush, and there's an unsettling tang that reminds you of bad cider. You chew slowly, pretending it's good. No one's buying it. One crewmate taps his bowl and says cheerfully, "At least the weevils are cooked." You grimace. He's not wrong. Historians still argue whether pirates ate better than Navy sailors or worse. Naval ships had structured rations, predictable, if uninspired. Pirates had chaos, but also access to plundered goods. You could be dining on brandy-glazed duck one week and weevil casserole the next. Tonight is definitely a weevil night. One quirky fact: some pirates actually toasted their hardtack biscuits over flame to kill bugs and soften the texture. This practice turned the biscuit into a kind of crunchy bread chip, slightly less painful to chew and slightly more edible with stew. You try it. You stab a biscuit chunk onto your knife, hold it over a lantern, and crisp it until the edges blacken. It tastes like ash and regret, but at least it crunches instead of crumbling into powder. Down in the galley, the cook sorts through the spice box, his treasure chest. Inside are clumps of thyme, coriander, a sad-looking vanilla bean, and one dried chili. He eyes the chili like it's a golden coin. You watch as he slices it into slivers and drops it into the pot. Within minutes, the scent changes. It's still porky and sour, but now it's hot, too. Your nose runs just standing near it. You try the stew again. The chili helps. It still tastes like salted disappointment, but now it burns a little on the way down, which is almost satisfying. Pirates used spices not just for flavor, but to mask rot, kill bacteria, they hoped, and make the same 4 ingredients feel like 5. Pepper, mustard, ginger, cinnamon, anything dry and portable was treasured. Some captains hoarded spice chests like personal gold. You slurp another spoonful and glance around. No one's smiling, but they're eating. That's something. Later that night, the cook calls for volunteers to help inspect the next round of food stores, which have to be rotated before the heat gets to them, too. You follow him below, where barrels of biscuit, dried beans, and salted fish sit stacked in a sour-smelling maze. You pry open a lid. Inside, the biscuits look fine, until one moves. You close the lid. Nope. Not today. The fish barrels are worse. One has grown a thin layer of white fuzz. Another has turned a suspicious shade of green-gray. The cook dumps them both overboard with a sigh. You open a barrel of beans, relieved to find only a few crawling things, easily scooped out. You tell yourself the boiling will take care of the rest. Back on deck, the breeze feels cleansing. The cook starts soaking beans for tomorrow, hoping, perhaps foolishly, that nothing else goes wrong overnight. You sit with your bowl of leftover stew and look up at the stars. This is the pirate food paradox. Too much salt, never enough freshness, and always just one barrel break away from hunger. And yet, there's something resilient about it. You keep eating. Keep cooking. Keep scraping the last flecks from the pot. One pirate near you finishes his bowl and says, "Could have used more rat." You laugh. You don't think he's joking. Tomorrow, you'll hope for fish. Or land. Or anything that doesn't start its life in a brine barrel. But for tonight, you settle for edible. Which, on a pirate ship, is often the closest thing you'll get to delicious. The wind shifts overnight, and by dawn, you see it land. Not a major port. Not even an island with a tavern. Just a low-lying, green-speckled lump of coastline in the distance, probably uncharted and definitely not on the captain's original course. But the moment someone yells fresh fruit from the crow's nest, everything changes. Within hours, the ship has dropped anchor in a shallow cove, longboats hit the water, and you're part of a small landing party sent ashore with 2 clear orders: don't get eaten and bring back something that grows. You trudge through dense palm and underbrush, sweat clinging to your shirt. There's no trail, just roots, vines, and the constant buzz of something definitely poisonous. But then, like a gift, you spot it: bananas. Small ones. Still green. Not quite ripe. You do not care. You're not the only one. Pirates swarm the area like bees. Within an hour, you've collected not just bananas, but mangoes, papayas, wild limes, even a few coconuts cracked open for their sweet, cooling water. This is what you live for: island bounty. Fresh food wasn't just a treat for pirates, it was salvation. After weeks of salted meat and briny stew, a ripe fruit was like medicine for the soul. And honestly, for the body, too. The threat of scurvy loomed constantly, so citrus fruits were worth their weight in doubloons. You take a bite of something orange and pulpy, maybe a mango, maybe a mistake, and your mouth floods with sweetness and acid and sugar and life. Historians still argue whether pirate crews were more prone to scurvy than navy ships, or whether their opportunistic foraging habits helped them fare better. Some logs show careful attempts to secure citrus and greens at every port, while others read like slow marches toward toothless doom. Back on the ship, the cook practically weeps when he sees what you've brought. He lines up the fruit like rare gems. Then he does something shocking. He makes salad. Now, it's not a modern salad. No kale, no vinaigrette. But he chops fruit into chunks, throws in lime juice, some grated coconut, a few slices of something green and bitter, and serves it in wooden bowls. You eat yours on the deck, juice dribbling down your chin, and you honestly consider crying. Not just because it's delicious, but because it's fresh. Your teeth tingle. Your tongue sings. Your stomach doesn't immediately clench in protest. Then he hands out the coconuts. Pirates loved coconut for a dozen reasons. The water inside was clean-ish, the flesh could be eaten raw or dried, and the shells could be burned, used as bowls, or even carved into dice. One pirate scrapes the meat out with a knife and calls it jungle bacon. He's not wrong. A quirky tidbit: pirates sometimes fermented coconut water into a mild, funky booze. It wasn't strong, but it was enough to lift spirits and kill time. You try a bit that someone's stashed in a flask. It's cloudy, sour, and vaguely fizzy. You decide you like it. The feast continues with grilled mango slices, lime-rubbed bananas, and one mysterious fruit the cook roasts in the fire until it cracks open like an egg. It smells like burnt sugar and tastes like cinnamon. Someone says it's breadfruit. You shrug and eat more. The fruit won't last more than a couple days, but while it's here, it feels like victory. A break in the salted monotony. A reminder that the world still offers color, texture, sweetness. That night, a few pirates fashion makeshift hammocks between the palms and sleep ashore with full bellies and sticky fingers. You lie under the stars, stomach round and happy, the taste of lime still clinging to your teeth. For once, you're not just surviving. You're feasting. And yet, part of you knows what's coming. Fruit rots. Coconuts crack. The sea always calls you back. But for tonight, you let the jungle sounds lull you into sleep, and you dream of citrus trees. By the time the fruit starts to turn, you're already at sea again. The mangoes bruise, the bananas blacken, and that thing someone swore was probably edible starts to bubble in its crate. The cook chucks the worst of it overboard with dramatic flair, back to the jungle with ye, and just like that, The last breath of island sweetness is gone. Now, the focus shifts. Hunting on land gave you a break, but now you have to plan for weeks ahead. The captain wants to sail east, toward shipping lanes. That means open sea, unpredictable weather, and zero chance of fresh supplies. You're back to ration math. The quartermaster stands over the stores like a suspicious librarian, doling out salt pork in slices as thin as playing cards. Hardtack is back in circulation. The pea barrel is suspiciously damp. And then someone asks, what about the rum? Pirate ships didn't just carry it, they relied on it. Rum was cleaner than water, debatably, lighter than beer, and just strong enough to dull the taste of moldy biscuits. It preserved fruit, cleaned wounds, and occasionally ended fights. Or started them. Tonight, the cook makes a special batch of something halfway between soup and punch, dried fruit boiled in water, spiced with cinnamon bark, and spiked with rum. It's both dessert and sleeping aid. You sip it slowly. It tastes like warm cider, if cider had been abandoned in a barrel and raised by wolves. Still, comforting. There's a tradition on board now. Every time the rum ration is passed out, you toast with your neighbors. Some say to the sea. Others say to our teeth. A few simply grunt and chug. One guy, though a wiry older sailor with gold in his beard, swears by an old pirate toast. To soft bread and sharp blades. You like that one. It makes sense. But here's the catch, too much rum, and everything else falls apart. Morale soars, yes, but discipline? Not so much. You see it already, men drinking in the morning, slurring over cards, sleeping through duty shifts. Historians still argue whether pirate ships had more alcohol-fueled chaos than their navy counterparts, or if the democratic structure of many crews actually helped them regulate excess. Some captains imposed strict rules, no rum before sundown, for instance, while others seemed to treat every bottle like treasure to be raided. A quirky tidbit, some pirates cut their rum with gunpowder to test its strength. If it still lit on fire, it was the real deal. If it fizzled, someone was watering it down, an offense punishable by being tossed overboard. Or, worse, given double biscuit duty. Back in the galley, the cook sighs. He's already seen 2 fights today, one over card cheating, the other over the last sliver of dried pineapple. So he institutes a new tactic, group cooking. He assigns pairs to help prep meals. It keeps people occupied, lowers tension, and honestly makes meals feel like small events again. Your first assigned dish. Shipboard rice cakes. The recipe, soak rice until soft. Mash with a bit of salt and leftover fruit, if any. Shape into patties. Grill on a hot plank until brown. Serve with a splash of vinegar or honey, if some miraculously exists. They're ugly. They're lumpy. They're the best thing you've had in 2 days. You eat yours on deck, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Someone passes around a bottle, and you take a swig. The rum bites hard, but leaves a warm trail in your chest. Then, the singing starts. It's off-key. It's rowdy. It's deeply inappropriate in places. But it's beautiful, in the way only slightly drunk pirate harmony can be. There's something sacred in these moments, when bellies are full, enough, mugs are shared, and the horizon glows red. You remember you're not just drifting. You're living. One guy carves a little spoon from driftwood. Another starts telling ghost stories. The cook even cracks a joke about turning the captain's boots into broth. You all laugh. You, laughing, with salt in your hair and biscuit crumbs on your lap and one last rice cake warming your palm. Somehow, this floating world of salt and chaos has become a kind of home. But tomorrow, it's back to the math. How many days until landfall? How many meals left? How much rum before everyone gets weird? You'll figure it out. You always do. The next morning, the sky is a bruised grey, and the wind smells wrong. Storm's coming. You feel it in your teeth, in your gut, in the way the gulls have vanished and the waves have started slapping the hull with too much rhythm. The crew's quieter than usual. Even the cook ties down his cauldrons with a few extra knots. When the rain comes, it doesn't tap, it hammers. It slaps the deck like it's angry you're still floating. The sails groan. The galley becomes a slick, sloshing maze. And food. Let's just say, it's no longer a matter of cooking, it's a matter of not drowning in your own soup. But you still have to eat. The cook improvises, storm rations. That means anything that doesn't need a fire, a bowl, or your full attention to chew. Hardtack, cured meat, maybe a chunk of dried cheese if you're lucky. You wrap it in cloth and keep it dry under your coat, eating between shifts at the pumps. Pirate storms didn't come with a menu, they came with seasickness. And oh, you feel it now. The rocking. The constant sway. You clutch your stomach, remembering the rice cakes, the mangoes, the rum. It all sloshes around like a barrel of regret. A crewmate beside you turns green, then grey. He doesn't make it to the rail in time. You step back just in time to avoid sharing in the aftermath. Storms turn every man into a walking stomach hazard. Historians still argue whether pirates were better adapted to storm survival than Navy sailors. Pirates didn't train formally, but they sailed constantly, relying on instinct and wild experience. Their lack of protocol sometimes saved them, other times, it cost them the ship. You cling to a rope and wedge a chunk of biscuit between your teeth, chewing like it's a survival tactic. It sort of is. The cook, bless him, does the unthinkable, cold stew. He throws dried peas, bits of smoked fish, and some diced pickled turnip into a cask. Adds water. Seals it tight. After a few hours of storm tossing, it's ready. Think of it as soup by centrifuge. You pry open the barrel with a crew knife. The stew smells adequate. You take a bite. It's sour. It's crunchy. It's cold. You nod and eat more. At one point, the storm lifts just enough to let everyone catch their breath. The sails are ragged, the deck's soaked, and someone's hat floats by like a lonely ghost. But the food stores? Somehow still dry. Barrels tied tight. Even the flour made it. You check your pockets. Your storm biscuit is a little soggy, but still edible. A quirky survival trick from some pirate crews, stuffing dry food into cloth pouches, then tucking them into hats or waistbands to keep them warm and out of reach of waves. You've done it. Half the crew has. Some even stick little bottles of vinegar or rum in their boots. It's absurd and genius. That night, you don't sleep. No one really does. The storm fades, but the sea still rolls. The cook passes out warm tea, just boiled water with a sprig of something green floating in it. Tastes like leaf. Feels like peace. One sailor picks at a chunk of salted beef, too tired to chew. Another dips his biscuit in the tea, turning it to paste. You follow suit. The mush is strangely comforting. After storms, food isn't just fuel, it's proof you survived. Every stale bite is a win. Every spoonful of watery pea mush means you're still here. And, against all odds, it bonds you. Someone tells a joke about the flying soup barrel of '89. Another claims he once cooked a rat during a storm using only a lantern and sheer willpower. You're not sure what's true. You laugh anyway. Later, the cook surprises everyone with his post-storm tradition, lemon peel boiled in honey water. It's barely sweet, barely citrusy, and barely fills a cup. But it tastes like hope. You sip slowly, staring at the stars reappearing one by one. The worst is over, for now. There's damage to the sails, some minor injuries, and one very unfortunate barrel of flour that didn't survive. But you did. And you've got just enough provisions to keep sailing toward the next plunder, the next island, the next warm meal. You curl up in your hammock, stomach not full but not empty either. It sloshes gently with salted stew and soggy biscuit. And in the darkness, you think, not for the first time, that pirates might have eaten badly, inconsistently, and often disgustingly. But they always, somehow, found a way to eat. The next dawn comes quietly. No storms. No shouting. Just the ship creaking softly beneath your boots and the gentle hum of sails catching wind. It should feel like just another day, but it doesn't. There's a tension in the air. A sense that this calm might not last. Word spreads, an enemy ship spotted at first light. Fast moving, low in the water. Maybe a merchant. Maybe military. Either way, the captain's pacing. The quartermaster's counting gunpowder. And you're thinking about breakfast. Because if today ends badly, it could be your last. There's an old superstition among pirates: never skip your last meal. Some believe it keeps your spirit from wandering. Others say it makes your ghost heavier, harder to forget. Either way, the cook knows what's expected. He makes something special. You help him. You want to keep your hands busy, your mind occupied. Together, you peel the last of the onions, crack a few eggs someone miraculously forgot about, and slice into the last wedge of salty ham. It's not much, but when he throws it in the pan and starts cooking over the flame, the smell pulls the whole crew toward the galley. No one speaks loudly. No one rushes. It's almost reverent. The meal is simple: eggs with crispy ham bits, fried onion, and toast made from dried biscuit, soaked and browned in fat until it's something like bread again. You eat slowly. Every bite matters. Every chew tastes like memory. One crewmate adds a splash of rum to his plate, calls it courage sauce. You laugh, but you take a sip too. Can't hurt. Historians still argue whether pirates truly had last meals before battle or capture. Some logs mention final feasts, while others suggest meals were rushed, even skipped entirely in the chaos. Still, stories persist of pirates sharing food before storming ships or walking the plank. One curious detail from a captured ship's log: a pirate requesting figs and bread before being hanged. He wanted something sweet and soft to remember. Another demanded boiled eel. No one knows why. Maybe just to make the hangman uncomfortable. You wonder, briefly, what you'd ask for. A fruit salad, maybe. Or even that weird fermented coconut water. But today isn't over. Not yet. As the enemy ship draws closer, the crew tightens their belts, finishes their food, and loads the cannons. The cook hands out one more biscuit each, for your pocket, or your ghost. You take yours, wrap it in cloth, and tuck it into your coat. Then, silence. The moment before things explode. The cannons fire. Smoke fills the air. You don't see much, just chaos, shouting, splinters flying past your ears. You duck, you run, you reload. You fight. You don't stop to think. And then, just like that, it's over. Your ship, still afloat. Some wounded. A few not so lucky. But you're breathing. The enemy ship surrenders. The captain's already shouting orders. The quartermaster's prepping for boarding. And the cook. He's got a bottle of rum in one hand, and a wide, crooked grin. He calls out, "Let's see what they had in their pantry." Soon, you're climbing aboard the captured ship, stepping past stunned sailors and crates of unknown treasures. And in one of the holds, your prize awaits: fresh bread. Flour. Even, bless it, a barrel of dried figs. It's like fate knew you were talking about figs this morning. That night, the crew celebrates. Bread is passed around like gold. Someone slices it thick and dips it in honey. You chew yours slowly, letting it soften on your tongue, the flavor rich and strange after weeks of salt and grit. There's also meat, smoked, unfamiliar, possibly goat. It's delicious. A few pirates try to guess the spices. Cinnamon, clove, gunpowder, probably all three. You sit under the stars, fig in hand, the sea calm once more. The cook hums a tune as he roasts something over a barrel-top fire. Someone strums a battered lute. You're not sure where it came from, probably looted, but it's oddly in tune. There's a peace tonight. A quiet satisfaction. You remember the rotten cheese, the rat stew, the lime water grog, the endless biscuits. You remember cooking over open flames, collecting fruit like treasure, and warming cold rice cakes in your hands. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't clean. But it was life. And somehow, through all the storms, hunger, and mystery meat, you survived. The fire on deck fades to embers. The laughter softens to murmurs. The sea rocks gently beneath you like a cradle, its rhythm slow and soothing. The scent of roasted meat lingers in the air, blending with salt and wood smoke, and your belly is just full enough to feel safe. Satisfied. Still. The ship creaks around you in the dark, not from strain, but from settling as if it, too, is ready to sleep. You lie back, hammock swaying slightly, the stars blinking overhead like soft candlelight in an endless sky. Your fingers are sticky with fig syrup. Your lips still carry the faint taste of warm bread. No voices now. Just the gentle hush of waves against the hull. The occasional flap of sail. The whisper of rope shifting with the breeze. Out here, on the open sea, surrounded by the ghosts of 1,000 meals, you find quiet. Whatever tomorrow brings, storm or sun, feast or famine, you've earned this moment of calm. Your eyes grow heavy. Your breath evens out. The hammock rocks you into dreams where the biscuits are always soft, the stew is always hot, and the rum never runs dry. Sleep now, sailor. The sea will keep you. The galley is quiet. And the cook is finally asleep, too.